Hello, and my name is Peter Rushmer, and I'm your host today of a Half Dozen Things podcast. A Half Dozen Things is a podcast for business owners and professionals just like you. Whether you're an underdog hungry for success or you're already smashing it but want to continue to level up, we're here each week for you to get insight and learning from the very best in the business. No fluff, no BS, and no self-proclaimed gurus talking about how easy business or life is. Just real, frank, and raw conversations. Hello, James.
Hello, Pete.
Thanks for joining me on a Half Dozen Things podcast. I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you.
No, thank you for inviting me.
And we're here in part of your office at Peterborough Workspace, where I'm also a tenant. So before we sort of dive into the 6 areas where you feel that business owners, and you are well qualified to be talking about success for small businesses, just tell us a bit about Peterborough Workspace, because I know you're quite passionate about small business.
Yeah, Peterborough Workspace is great. It's everyone will say that about their business if they enjoy it, but it is a wonderfully unique place. It's been going now since '91. It was set up originally by the Development Corporation as a means to provide support for the local community who want to start their own business, who want to go out and try and do it by themselves. And so it was supported by them, supported by the council. We've moved away from both those organisations now. We're still a not-for-profit organisation, but we're not backed, supported or funded by anyone. Our primary goal is to help our tenants succeed, to leave us. We don't want them. That's what I always say. When you turn up, when anyone else turns up, almost the first thing out of my mouth is I don't want you. Because I want you to leave us. I want you to go, had a great time, but actually we're moving on to bigger and better things. The model of the business has done this and that, and we were. So it's primarily a landlord, but much more than that. You know yourself. It's a wonderfully collaborative, great space to start a business.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It's the incubator, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the incubator, we like to think of it, and I've had so much value. I've been a tenant here for 18 months now, I'd say, and hasn't that flown by? It's incredible, really. But yeah, 18 months. We have what I call the penthouse suite upstairs.
You've got more windows than I have. Which for anyone who knows Workspace means that, you're doing well if you've got the windows.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Workspace, if anyone's never been, I really recommend visiting. And if you are considering setting up in business, James is definitely a man to speak to. Obviously, as well as running here, he's also got a networking event that he runs called the Peterborough Network too. So let's have a bit of a crack through what you suggest are sort of the half dozen things. So enjoy what you do. Explain that to me a little bit, please, James.
Look, if you're going to be at a place of work doing your job, your task, your function for however many hours a day, however many days a week, for however many years, you have to enjoy it at some level. Now, I'll qualify that by saying you don't have to be a gurning idiot. You don't have to go in every day and come home every day with this... Forgive, are we allowed to swear?
Absolutely, yeah.
With that shitty grin on your face, because that's not enjoyment. That's a different scenario. You need to have something that makes you want to get up out of bed. It makes you want to go to work. You don't fear it. You don't dread it. It will go up and down. There'll be days where you don't want to be here. There'll be days when you want to run and stick your head under the pillow. But you have to get an enjoyment out of what you do. It's like anything that you do in life outside of work. You run.
Yep.
I know you find it hard. But you enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right.
You enjoy it. Your kids, your family, you enjoy it. You're here at work probably more than you are with your family. So you gotta find a reason to enjoy it, and it's a fundamental basic for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's my mindset in life in general.
Yeah, absolutely. I think passion, having passion in what you do is so vital to ensure success, because otherwise it gets pretty tough, doesn't it? It does get really, really tough. And I think if you haven't got the passion and you haven't got the spark, you're so much more likely to just walk away when the going gets tough, aren't you?
Yeah, especially as someone who runs your own business. When you work for someone else, there is an argument that you can have coast. you can just switch off, or have those days, those weeks, months even maybe, where you'll just wake up, rinse, repeat, do the same thing over and over and over again. But you can't do that if it's your own business, because it will suffer. Maybe not then, but maybe a few months down the line. So I people will phrase it differently. They'll passion, drive, motivation, whatever you want to call it. But for me, in my simple terms, you just got to enjoy what you do.
Enjoy it, yeah. No, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the second one was around knowing yourself. So quite an important factor, I would say.
Yeah, it is. It's a many-layered subject, really, because it's not just some psychobabble about know yourself. It's about, so if you're going to go into business by yourself, you've got to know your strengths. You've got to admit and fess up to the weaknesses, because they're going to trip you up.
Absolutely.
You've got to know what you need to improve on. You've got to know what you don't know. You've got to know, basically, also when you get into work, when you get into the processes, you've also got to recognise signs in yourself. When you're becoming too stressed, when you're putting off that subject, when you're prevaricating because you don't want to deal with a difficult situation.
I'm so glad you used that word, because it came up on here and I was like, prevaricating. Wow.
It's a great word. I like it. You've got to know when you're tired. Yeah. Because also that will affect your home life. That will affect your family. That will affect the business. Yeah. So it all sounds very highbrow, but knowing yourself just is basically knowing what you can do well, knowing what you don't do well, knowing what you do know, knowing what you don't know, and recognising the signs of things as they're going along. You must have at times where you're tired. 100%,
yeah. And I think there's nothing like going into relying on yourself and going into business to realise your own vulnerabilities. Yeah. I think for me, one of the biggest challenges I've found with myself is I have weaknesses and I'm willing to admit what they are. I have strengths, and I'm more than happy to work to those. But I think the tendency is that, especially when you start on your own and you are on your own, time is so precious, and you have this tendency to overdevelop the stuff you enjoy. And I'm really bad. I know I'm really bad for that. But then I'll procrastinate on the stuff that I'm not good at. And there's so much time, effort, money to be wasted by not really paying attention. So if you know those things, you know that you can have someone who's good at what you're bad at to help you.
Yeah. I love a good dig through a spreadsheet. I love giving me loads of data to chunk and have some fun and spot some patterns through, and come back in a week and I'll still be there. But also, that know yourself right now. We are middle of May, we're in the middle of lockdown, we're in this horrible scenario. Yeah. It's really important, because I think there'll be lots of people who actually might be discovering things about themselves that they didn't know. Yep. And that's not a negative. That's a positive, because then you can address it. Yep. But being in isolation or lockdown, or not being able to do this,
of course, yeah.
Or it will make people, I think, question themselves. And that is never a bad thing. Knowing a situation is part of the problem, because you can then work out how to deal with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very interesting, because people look up to others, the celebrities and the big business people, and there's this facade of I'm perfect and I'm impenetrable. But you're certainly not, and you're not fallible. And I know, for example, that I'm a great that I like to think of new things. I like creating stuff. Which is really strange, because I never really did that when I worked for other people. However, I know that I could do with someone to support me from an analytical point of view, from a complete finisher point of view. So I'll start stuff, and I'll start loads of stuff and have loads of great ideas. And I think a lot of people who are entrepreneurial probably think like that, but it's quite hard to then just. And you probably see it all the time with the varying people that come through Workspace.
Yeah. Workspace is a reflection of Peterborough in a way, because we are this peculiar setup that we can have not just office-based businesses here, but we can have people that make a bit of mess, and online retailers and trainers and providers and things like that. So we see a whole range of different businesses, and I see a whole range of different people, and sometimes when I meet people for the first time, I'll come away and think, I don't think I'm going to see them again, or there'll be others that blow you away, and again, without banging the workspace drum, that is the wonderful thing about this place, is that you get exposed to so many different things.
Do you ever think when you meet people and go, when they're first starting out on their journey, and you think, yeah, they're gonna, I suppose the successful move out onto bigger and better things is the great result, and the moving out onto not so great things is potentially the bad result. Do you ever sort of hazard a guess in your own brain?
Obviously, and I'm not going to comment. Yeah, okay. Of course, it's human nature, isn't it?
Yeah.
You have someone come in and it's a bit like, what's it called? Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah.
You know, some child from a very early age has been told by mummy and daddy that they're the world's best singer because that's what mummy and daddy does, and they take it to a level that they really shouldn't. I've not had that, but sometimes some people turn up and they've got something that quite clearly is a lovely idea. It could be a really good hobby. It could be something that's fun for them. But unless they know themselves and they know what they don't know and know what they know, they're never going to turn it into a business because there's something wrong about it that's missing.
Yeah.
That they need to fill in the gaps.
Yeah.
And it's quite hard. Because I don't want to turn people away, and I try my best not to. I try to make people say, look, go away and think about this. But yeah, of course, it's human nature. When someone walks through the door, you're kind of thinking, is this going to work? Because also I want to find out whether in a month's time I'm going to be looking for a new tenant.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Okay, so moving on to the next point, knowing your business. So, you know, what does that mean to you? What looks great about when people know their business?
That's the geek now starting to come out in there, okay? Because that's where. So prior to here, for some of the people that may or may not know, I spent 20 years in the regional press. The first 10 of that was in marketing, and I was given free rein, not just to do promotional marketing, but research marketing. And we had some wonderful tools for profiling and for demographics and understanding consumer behaviours. And the thing about know your business is you found something you're good at, you found something you've got a passion at that you might want to do. It might be a complete 360 from what you're doing in your normal life, it might be an extension of it or whatever. You've got to know that business, you've got to know that industry, you've got to know what the rules and regulations are, how far you can push up against them, you've got to know what your competitors are doing, you've got to know your target market, your audience, you've really, really got to know everything about it, and don't stop just because you've done that. As we all know and as we all see, that market, that industry, that environment constantly changes. So what was relevant, again, rather pertinent, what was relevant 6 months ago is almost irrelevant now in some cases because it just doesn't stack up.
Yeah, of course.
So if you're going on your old model of, no, that's my business, that's what it said 6 months ago, that's what the industry is, that's what the target market says,
yeah, absolutely.
You're going to be out the door.
I heard someone mention earlier, it did make me chuckle, they said 2020 BC, 2020 before COVID, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. It really tickled me. Okay, so and I suppose particularly you've experienced that firsthand from coming from print and seeing that too. Yeah,
so I was really... You and I have networked a lot and we spoke a lot, Pete, and everything. And I say this a lot. I always say I was really lucky. I think actually some of that, I have to take credit for that luck somehow. But I was really lucky in the newspapers in that first 10 years in that I wasn't just dealing with newspapers. I was dealing with newspapers, magazines, events, fledgling websites, because when I was around, that was when they were starting to get a bit of traction. But I also worked very closely with advertisers' clients. So very quickly I had to understand the motor industry, the property industry, trades, because the reps would be saying, right, I need this presentation, I need to do this, and I needed to understand. So you've got to get under the skin. You've got to understand what that business is, because we all can spot a fake fairly quickly.
If anyone could hear that, that was a Harley Davidson just going across.
It wasn't my stomach.
Which belongs to Carl. Sorry, that interrupted you. Where were you?
No, that's quite right. Yeah, so we're just talking about that ability to understand a market. Newspapers as an industry. So again, just very quickly, I know you mentioned it at the start, but newspapers is not newspapers as an industry. It's not the Gutenberg press. It's not just a newspaper kind of thing. It's a massive industry that is communication.
Yep.
It's communication. If you look at it as that as an industry, you start to understand the spread and the depth of it. And it's local news, and that's all I've ever done. Yep. Always, apart from a very short period when I left university, all my work has always been around local, always been with local business. And local newspapers are an amazing industry to be in. I love it. I still look back on it at that time as amazing. It's an industry that constantly changes. If you think about it, there can't be many industries where you go to work today, you create that product, and then tomorrow you create another brand new product, completely different.
Absolutely.
New news, new adverts, everything about it will be completely different. And it's an amazing industry to grow up in terms of your business life. And yet it certainly served me well for when I took over here. Yeah,
got you. And it's I think one of the things that you've instilled in me over the past time that we've known each other about thinking local. Obviously, some businesses that won't apply to, but one of the things or the advice that I took on board over the past year, and it's quite interesting, it made me chuckle when the bit of business came off. So one of the things we do is first aid training, and I had some leaflets printed, and I had a local business do a leaflet drop for me, and we are located right next to a business called Ability International, who I don't really know. I've never knocked on their door, but I got 2 first aid training bookings out of a leaflet drop into them. And actually, it's funny because the wall of my training room backs onto their business.
Yeah.
So I think very sage advice, really. Very, very sage advice.
I mean, when you talk about know your business, so when we talk about that particular instance, where that's particularly relevant is, so in that case, know your business means know your neighbourhood.
Yeah.
Know your neighbourhood. You should, if you're a local business that deals locally, you should know that it's Bob next door, that it's Sarah that side, and because they're your advocates, they're your clients. You're going to have that relationship with them, and that's just that other level, if you like, of know your business.
Yeah, it does. It massively links into a conversation I had as well with an IFA actually locally in Peterborough, and he said if you put your business a pin in the map and you actually draw a 2 mile radius around your business, there is enough economy and enough business in there to sustain a small business just in that small area, which I find fascinating. I suppose it does depend on the type of business, but for us, the training that we do, I travel regularly 70 miles up the road to carry out business. That's just the way it's gone. But it is interesting when you sort of really look at what's local and what's efficient and what's effective.
Yeah.
But it's so important. Sort of going back to the broadest area of knowing your business, it's very, very important to understand that. I came into the business I'm in understanding all the regulations, but at the same time, I'd seen an opportunity in a business area that I hadn't necessarily run or worked in the business. So having come from a blue chip company like Volvo, like I did, and then I've come into training and consultancy, there were some growing pains. There were some real growing pains. So I'd experienced the industry through being a customer. I'd experienced the industry through experience of receiving training and realising that I had an opportunity to do it better. But actually there was a lot of nitty gritty that I had to learn very quickly that was quite painful. So I suppose my suggestion would be that before taking that jump, it might be good to really get some good experience and understand things. It's not... I've been able to overcome that, but I think there's some that may then struggle if they don't really know exactly what it is they're going for.
Yeah, and look, you're not going to know everything. Of course you're not. That's the fun, if you like, the thrill bit, the adrenaline bit is that suddenly you're going to find yourself thrown into a situation where you don't know what you're doing. You're out of your depth. And I just mean that because it's out of your comfort zone kind of approach. And there's going to be people that don't react well to that, and there's going to be others that will process it, will decide what's good and bad about it, and will spit out the result in a way that means that they can go forward, and maybe the business changes slightly direction, maybe the business pivots, because actually you I know very on the early days with you, Pete, if you don't mind me saying, that's very much the case. It was lots of little baby steps, and then you'd move this way a bit, and then it moves that way a bit, because you had a grand plan, but the detail of it just moves you sideways that way, but you're still going forward. But as you learn and realise that actually maybe that approach works better than that approach, well, actually I'm going to do that then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that those 2 points clearly dovetail together, the knowing yourself and then knowing your business. Because actually, if you know your business and you know this, if you know yourself, your business is always a reflection of you. I think, especially in the early days, it's always a reflection of you. So therefore, your strengths and weaknesses will be reflected in the business. And I think that's something that people have to realise.
It flagship is Pete and Maggie,
essentially,
so I don't get told off.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
She'll be down here with her pots and pans. She's cooking dinner at the minute. I probably shouldn't say that, but never mind.
There's a bed in the corner.
I think I'll be staying here tonight.
But flagship is Pete and Maggie. Maggie and Pete are as a small fledgling business, you are so enmeshed together because it is your belief, your drive, your goal. And as you grow and take on people and take on other functions and that, the challenge is to still keep that relationship, but recognise the fact that you've got to give away a bit. Because you can't be so heavily involved in it, you can't be everywhere. Yeah, absolutely,
absolutely, and I think that is a challenge, because by knowing yourself, you can then know the weaknesses. So actually, and the big challenge, and I see it from business owners when I look in, that you're very likely to bring people in who reflect you as well, because the natural rapport is then built. And I know we're sort of digressing slightly, but I think it's very important. You take people on that reflect your abilities, and actually you're then going to exacerbate. You're going to exacerbate the problem. Sorry.
No. I'm smiling. So I forget we're recording as well on video as well. I'm smiling because I literally had that conversation a few times over the last few days of this week, where I've been saying to someone, that's the most, when you work in a large corporate and you're employing people, and you go away on your training the trainer courses, and you go away on management courses and your people skill courses and all these things, it's hammered into you. The worst thing to ever do is to employ someone like you. You don't want that, especially if you're going to be a manager who manages and doesn't do the work, because you want to be able to go, right, well, okay, well, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, they're going to do... And that's so important for a small business. It goes back to know yourself, know your business, and some of the other things that we'll touch on as well. But you're right, there's no point employing another Pete.
Oh, absolutely. And interestingly, and this moves nicely into the next area around planning, because actually planning is something I really enjoy doing, and you've outlined that as an important thing to drive success. So what does a good plan look like to you? What does a bad plan look like?
Now, I'm going to confess, I've been listening to the shows. Obviously, I heard Jem, who I mean, what is it to say about Jem? I absolutely love him.
Brilliant guest.
And there's that military saying that I think he even mentioned it in the podcast about the first casualty of war is the plan, or words to that effect. Jem, sorry if I've got it wrong. But
I'm sure he'll be listening and giving you a call.
He's going to give you a score out of 10. And that's the most important thing about a plan, is exactly that it has to be adaptable. It's not... if I can name plug, if you don't mind, Colin Nottage does some work for me, and his guys come in and do assessment about our plans, and they always make the comment about they never want to see that plan on a dusty shelf that in a year's time gets taken off, dusted off, and reviewed again.
Of course.
A plan is a living document. A plan is something that, again, in this time we're in, is constantly being changed, because the plan that worked a few months ago isn't relevant now, because we've got to distance, we've got to do this and that. So a really good plan is well thought out, is well constructed, has lots of goals and objectives and things to keep it on board, but most importantly, it's got to have that ability to flex and change.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. Please do follow me at Pete Rushmer on LinkedIn, or on Facebook, follow Flagship Training UK, and you can find us on YouTube too at Flagship UK.